very serious about study as well. So we had classes in the mosque every day of Arabic and fiqh and so on. And I soon began to teach in the mosque as well, because we had about 100 children in the community that we educated ourselves. We didn't go to non-Muslim schools. And that was part of our ethos. We had our own businesses, and we worked for each other, and we lived as much as possible a purely Islamic existence within the prevailing UK non-Muslim culture. So we had our own school, one of the first Muslim schools in England, I think, and I taught Arabic and Quran to the children, and also other subjects, history and geography and English and so on. And it was really being part of that community and traveling to Spain and to North Africa that I began to develop as a Muslim.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Rahmanir Rahim. Maliki Yawmiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين.
So before I became Muslim, I had been working as a chef for about 7 years. I had my own restaurant. But when I became Muslim, it was not something I could really continue with as a career in England. So I decided to train to teach English as a foreign language. And to get a job anywhere else in the world than England, my ambition was to perhaps come to the Middle East to teach English and to bring up my family in a Muslim country. But in the Middle East, they really appreciate university degrees. And I didn't have a university degree. I'd left school at 16, so I had no formal education. So I decided it was time to go back to university. And I chose to study linguistics and philosophy. And after that, there was only really one thing to do with a degree like that, which was to become a school teacher. So I trained to become a school teacher, and that's how I got into this career some 25 years ago of being a school teacher, which I've been ever since. I went on to further studies in religion and did a master's and so on. And what's interested me since that time is this perception that people don't seem to know what's going on with their lives, don't seem to know what's going on in the world. And why is it historically that Western civilization has arrived at this point where it's on the one hand dominant in the world, but on the other hand completely nihilistic and without any sense of direction and very, very destructive? Now, how is it that way of life and philosophy has established itself so powerfully? And it's all tied in with technology as well, which is the technological attitude is a very destructive attitude. It's not the technology in itself, but it's the attitude that sees the world as something to be used and something to be used up, and sees people as a resource rather than as individuals, but this philosophy that sees people as a resource as well. And somewhere along the line, Western civilization lost its thread, and I think we're coming to the end of that time now. And interestingly, it didn't start out like that. Something went wrong about 2,000 years ago, which has led to the situation that we have today. So my interest in education is, how can we find a form of education that wakes people up and sets them on the Sirat al-Mustaqim with a full awareness of who they are and where they are and what they're here for? Not just a superficial awareness, but a profound understanding of the human condition and what has to be done to bring the world back to some kind of sense of order and sanity from the situation that it's in at the moment. I first met Manon when we were both 14, and I went to France on a school visit, and we met each other at that time. And for the next 3 years, every school holiday, I would go to France, or she would come to England, and we would spend our school holidays together from the age of 14 to about 17. But then circumstances took us apart. Manon actually finished school a year earlier than me, so she had the need to move, and I still had a year to finish in college. So we split up at that time and went our separate ways. But from that time onwards, I'd often thought about her, and that I would like to see her again or find out how she was getting on. And so much later, after my first wife and I had unfortunately divorced, I went back to Paris just for a holiday, and out of a kind of sense of nostalgia, I went back to the area in the second arrondissement where Manon lived with her family in the 60s and early 70s, opening the door just to see what it was like inside one of these old Parisian buildings, you know. And the door was open. I looked inside and saw that there were still the letterboxes on the wall with the family name still on the letterbox. I was absolutely astounded, because I thought that there was no way that our lives would ever become entwined again. My parents had moved about 10 times, you know, so the idea that her parents might still be living in the same house was extraordinary. So I wrote a letter to the house to say, hello, how are you, do you remember me? And then sat back and waited to see what would happen. I had no idea what had happened with her life, or where she was, or if she was still alive, or what she was doing, or anything.
J'ai eu des nouvelles d'Ibrahim, qui à l'époque s'appelait Simon, par ma sœur.
I received news from Ibrahim, who was then still called Simon. In fact, I was living in the island of Réunion. It is a French department in the Indian Ocean, some 15,000 kilometers away from France. When my sister called me to inform me that they just had received news from Simon, I was not especially shocked, more kind of amused, whereas my sister was really excited for me. In fact, I had been alone for long, a chosen loneliness, because I was happy and satisfied with a very demanding career, and I had very little time for anything else. When I first contacted Simon, I learned about his conversion to Islam, and I was under shock. Although I was not against Islam, I was really shocked, because it is something that has a strong impact on someone's life to be a Muslim. Regardless my openness to different faiths at that time, I felt Islam was particular, politically, in its practice, in its tradition, in so many ways. I felt that our relation would probably be difficult. In fact, I was shocked of my own reaction. I thought to myself, what is the matter with you? You have surahs on the wall. I then realized that becoming a Muslim, or just sharing something deep with Islam, was difficult as a French, simply because in our society nothing is done to facilitate this relationship. Even if in France things seem to be going on smoothly, there is without a doubt an existing and fed concept of contradiction between being French and being a Muslim. And without even realizing, this is the way I had been brought up. Although, deep inside me, something was attracted to the Islamic art and culture, and the attitude of Muslims I knew giving me their affection and enjoying sharing with